So, thank goodness for all of us.
But if Daniel Dennett is saying, there's not a little man in our heads that is all powerful, there are a bunch of little men in our head that are partly powerful, and you can break them down until you finally have dumb, stupid ants running around. And then, well, you can replace the whole thing by a machine.
In principle, yes.
Yes.
That's the claim.
I want to go back to this.
Why should you want to make that
vision
claim? I can't understand it.
And why do you need any little men?
Well,
why do you want to reduce it all to a machine? Why should this metaphor be so hypnotically attractive?
And
yes,
do you have a dog?
Why?
I have had dogs, in fact, yes. Right now I'm dogless. Yes, but I'm also a father and grandfather.
What was his name?
One was Charlie and one was Duffy. So, yes. The homunculi is merely a heuristic bridge, an explanatory principle. For many, many years, psychologists in particular had learned to scoff at a theory which had a homunculus, because manifestly you weren't explaining anything. If you had a theory of vision which was really a theory of television, which said there was a screen somewhere in the head which was watched by an inner homunculus, you clearly had simply postponed the whole problem. So people got the idea that homunculus theories were bad. What they were missing was another option, which is if you can break the problem down so that you have a team of homunculi and each one does less than the whole job, then you actually can make progress. And then if you can take those homunculi in turn and break them down. Here I'm using homunculi in an abstract sense. It's simply a bit of machinery which can be treated as having a certain sort of intelligence and being able to perform certain tasks. And so the idea of this cascade, this discharging of homunculi, you ask, why do I want to reduce it down in the end? Because that's the only way that you discharge this otherwise offensive metaphor of the inner homunculus. If you can discharge the homunculi, then you're home.
The natural word for you, the natural word for you to use at this point, and it seems to be the verb, the noun which your verbs demand, is the word agent. And what you're saying,
agent is good. No, agent is fine.
But that's very. But I mean,
yes.
But the word machine and the word agent are not in colloquial usage interchangeable.
Oh no, but the point is.
I mean, you break the overall agency down into smaller sub-agencies, and if
but
that's what you're saying,
finally you get down to agencies which are no bigger than a neuron, and then the question is a neuron a machine? It can be replaced by a machine, I think.
But the replacement of a single large task by a lot of subtasks, each of which is mediated by a particular sub-agent, this from the outside looks like a very different program from the one that you were presenting us with at the beginning. And so to this extent, I do think, what colloquial word you choose to adopt to expound your point of view is terribly important, and you may end up by saying things that are deeply misleading to people in ways that you do like, or in ways that you don't like.
Well, you see this as a sort of needless provocation on my part, and I see it rather as a sort of antiseptic that's required to keep people from positing what I call wonder tissue. One sees in the neurosciences in particular, every now and then, large sort of theoretical projects, and at one point or another they postulate a little wonder tissue to get them over the embarrassment. They know roughly what sort of job has to be done there.
You mean Jack Eccles?
Yes. Whoa, yes, but not just Jack Eccles. I'm talking about apparently card-carrying materialists who nevertheless permit themselves to postulate wonder tissue at one place or another in their theory, and they don't know what they're talking about, and they don't apparently mind. And I think that insisting, the prohibition of the postulation of wonder tissue is really what I'm getting at when I use a term like machine.
It may be in a similar sense that Gerald Edelman talks about spooks. which also mustn't be permitted, and he gets particularly worried about quantal theories of consciousness, which somehow omit all the real tissue of the nervous system and maybe replace it with wonder tissue. Now I think one has to again hold tight to the real tissue of the nervous system. Now certainly decomposition one way and another occurs in all sorts of activities which are seemingly seamless. And we perhaps, in a naive way, in an introspection, would say the world is given to us. You've shown very nicely that that there's all sorts of detail which is not given. Now one can show very easily that colour and movement and shape and other modalities are separately constructed. And nothing is more illuminating in this way than certain clinical conditions which specifically knock out one of these. One can have a specific motion blindness, which is quite extraordinary. In such cases, someone may see a car clearly until it moves off, and then it vanishes. And instead there's a series of stills. Mm-hmm. Now, there are 30-odd visual centres at latest count in the brain, 32. There does not seem to be any master area on which all of these converge. So then there's a problem of composition or coherence or binding. How is all brought together? And in the absence of any convergence. Now, Edelman again would see this in terms of what he calls re-entrant signaling, a very massive sort of intercourse in parallel and within each centre and between each centre, so that the final visual construction, and one probably ought to avoid a word like image, the final visual construction is a process of negotiation and incessantly made. Here, then, there's no homunculus, but somehow there may appear to be, I will say appear, there may appear to be only a what and not a who, and so that one might say, well, yes, I have these 32 areas which are communicating, but there's me. Where do I come?
Over and above those. Yes, that's the mistake.
Where do I come into this? And the answer, roughly, would be that these 32 areas and their connectivity and their communication are yours from the start, and they bear the impress of your experience and your unique place in the world and your values from the start. So in this sense, consciousness is the first sensory consciousness, perceptual consciousness, is a synthesis into a scene, not of causally or physically related objects or events, but of objects and events which are related in terms of your experience and your values. So your consciousness is yours from the start. In a sense,
but there is also the thinner sense still. There's a lovely story about Maurice Cohen at CCNY. A student in his class one day put his hand up and said, Professor Cohen, how do I know that I exist? And Maurice Cohen instantly came back, and who is asking? I mean, there is that kind of possession in which, as it is you who are the subject of all this. I mean, that question at least is settled. I mean, what the nature of the possession relation is, that's we can go into.
Thank goodness for all of us.